Welcome to the One Woman Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Kirbanu, and this is the place where you'll hear stories, insights, and strategies from inspirational women around the world to give you the confidence needed to pursue your creative passion as a business. My guest for you today, Gauri, is an award-winning filmmaker who epitomizes what it is to be a true artist, throwing herself passionately and intensely into every single one of her creative endeavors. She continues to deliver cinematic truth behind every topic she tackles. At the end of this interview, I hope that you're going to learn from her how to tune into and follow your passions, listen to and trust your own creative process, and how to embrace and follow the dreams of your heart. Gauri, I am so happy that we can make this happen. I know it's been a little bit of a challenge for us to get this whole technical thing to work and to find the time together because of both our busy schedules. So I'm just really, really grateful for you to take the time today to have this great chat with me and to share your story and your creative process with the One Woman Tribe audience.
Thank you so much. I am absolutely honored to be able to be a part of this. I think what you're doing is incredible, and I have absolute belief in your vision. And I think you are a little gem who is providing society with things that we often forget.
Oh, you are so sweet. Thank you. And guys, to everybody listening, I actually want to share a little bit about how Gauri and I met because it's a special story. And we've come to the conclusion that we're kind of like soul sisters, and we definitely have some work to do together in the future, of which is yet unclear. But we actually met, what was it, about 2 months ago or 3 months ago?
Yes, I think 2 months ago.
Yeah, we met about 2 months ago on a train in the south of Germany. And I was on tour. And did you go to a wedding or what were you doing?
No, at that time I was taking a train from Stuttgart to Munich to visit a friend of mine for the day.
That's right. And you were on vacation or something from.
Yes, I was on vacation. So I was in Scotland, then I was traveling through Germany a bit, and then Switzerland. And at that point, my German skills are not very good. Hence how this friendship began.
so she was, of course. So, guys, for the listeners that don't live in Germany, every country has a certain culture. Which, when we live somewhere, it's really important, I believe, that we learn to understand the culture. And of course, you know that, Gauri, having lived in many different countries yourself. And so in Germany, when you catch a train, basically there's a reservation system that you can use. And if you use that, then it means you pay a bit of extra money on top of the cost of the ticket to reserve a seat. And what happened pretty quickly was that I realized that Gauri, who happened to be sitting across the aisle from me on the same train, was sitting in the seats belonging to an old elderly couple. And when they got on and found her sitting there, they were not exactly excited about the present that Santa Claus had left for them. And they were really politely but firmly asking her to get out of the seat. And of course, she didn't understand. And their English, as they were an older couple, was unfortunately not very good. And so they were having trouble communicating with each other. At which point I thought to myself, I think I can help. And so I just kind of explained to her what she needed to do. And of course, the seat across from me was free, which meant that you ended up sitting across from me. And then we started talking.
Yes.
And then I think we had a great conversation about creativity and the artistic process and being a woman and, oh my God, your movies and what you've been doing and your creative process. Until I think I had to get off of the train. So
Yes.
this is the whole way we met each other. And actually on that train, it was before I'd started interviewing people for the podcast, but I already knew that I wanted to do it. And I already asked her about it, or asked you about it on the train. So coming full circle, I'm so happy that you're here.
Likewise, I am really, really happy that I did not know what that sign meant above me.
Yes.
Because had I understood the culture of the train culture, I would have never met you. So, like I said, I think strangers on a train are a beautiful thing.
It is. It's so true, and it's so awesome. So you're, of course, an Indian-born woman talking to me at the moment from Dubai,
Yes,
and I am an Australian-born woman talking to you from Germany. So this is also something really cool, I find.
likewise. I think it's incredible.
When we met, something that fascinated me really quickly was your creative soul and how you talk about the creative process. And I'm really excited to delve into that with you and share that with the audience, actually. But before we get into that, I would love to know just a little bit about how you found your way into cinematography.
Sure. So, like you had said, I'm Indian. So, I was born in India. I was born in New Delhi. And my family and I moved to Dubai when I was 3, which was about, oh goodness, about 30 years, 29 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, and I had always studied away. So I went away when I was 13 to boarding school. And I was away at school in Scotland. Then I was away at school in Switzerland. When I was in Switzerland, I'd always had a flair for the arts. I'd always been really interested in, I would say, the depth of life, if that makes sense, because I
Mm.
think art really correlates to that. And I had to kind of choose. I was in the British system, and I had to choose um, what subjects I wanted to do. And at that time, my sister, she was like, "Oh, look, they have film, and you love to watch movies." So I was like, "Oh, awesome! So I can go to school and just watch movies all day. Is it that simple?" And I was doing theater. I was doing A-level theater. So I said, "Okay, I'll do film." So I walk into this class and I'm overly ecstatic. And I can never forget my teacher. He changed my entire life. I think in our life, when we're younger, especially at that age, the impact that a teacher or a mentor or a guider can have on you can really shape your life, because I feel like you're at a crossroad at that point. And I was blessed to have this gentleman being my teacher. And as you know, the classes were going on, I mean, literally, I was on top of the moon. I would be ecstatic. I would like nothing existed to me in the world but that specific moment.
Wow.
I would feel like physically, I would feel, chills. I would have goosebumps. I remember I was introduced to Alfred Hitchcock's work and I was blown away. And I started realizing, oh my God, like, I think I really, really love this.
Mm.
And at that time, my teacher was, like photocopying my work. And I was like, okay, one thing is to like something. The other thing is, are you good at it? Because you do need to make this into a career. Not to say that
Yeah.
I'm kind of good in what I'm doing in that sense, but in the sense that, is it something realistic? Um, and at that time, so my father is actually a photographer. He's really interesting. I can perhaps share something a little later about him. He's really interesting as a photographer. He's done some really unique things. Um, but I still come from an Indian background. And
Mhm.
I didn't know how to convince my family that I'm going to go to film school. Like
Mm.
at that moment, I knew that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like there's nothing else that exists to me. And I must have been, what, 16? But nothing felt clearer to me in my life. And nothing ever has till now than film. Like film is the only thing that makes me feel it's my breath, it's my oxygen, it's my everything. And so my wonderful teacher at that time was very supportive and actually played a huge role in convincing my dad that I can go to film school. So from there, I graduated and I went to the University of Miami, where I did
Mhm.
film and theater. Um, I was not very happy with my program because, firstly, no one can teach you that talent. You go to, my belief is that you go to an art school because it teaches you and gives you the tools in order to understand how to express what is naturally innate in you to the world, right?
Mm.
But the American system is much more broader, it's much more general. And I was very hungry. And, kind of going into my second year, third year, I still wasn't like, when was I going to make films? Like, I was exhausted of just talking about it. So I'm a bit of an adventurer, and I decided that no, I'm going to move to film school in London. And I didn't tell my family. I just applied online, and I'd actually told my sister. And I get a call, and I have an interview, and I'm in. And like, I'm still enrolled at the University of Miami. So I call my dad. I'm like, Dad, I'm moving to London and I'm moving to film school. And he's like, Really? Who's going to pay for it? I'm like, You know what? Frankly, you need to realize that I'm a filmmaker. Like, I'm not going to be a filmmaker. I am one now. And if you're not going to support me, that's absolutely fine. I will do whatever it is I have to do. But nothing is stopping me from going to this school. Um, and I'm very, very determined with film. So my poor father was like, I don't know what to do with this girl, and then I ended up at this film school in London called the Met Film School. And that school, I always say this, it really gave me my life. On day one, I had a
Wow.
camera in my hands. That's it. Like, that school set me up. It gave me everything I needed to. In my second term, I was already shooting a film in India. Um,
Wow.
my graduation film, I ended up shooting in India, and that's how my connection came to India. So when I was in my graduation film, it was so I really like to use film as a platform of voice. I'm deeply obsessed with the desire to give those a voice that don't have the luxury of having one. And I would definitely say I use film. Film is a philanthropy to me as well, where I like to talk about issues. I like to honestly express if something is troubling me so much that I have no answers to it. I know I'm going to end up making a film about it. And my graduation film ended up getting banned in Dubai,
Wow.
and I had very difficult situations, which I probably cannot discuss strongly here. But the environment does not harbor creative growth. And at that
Mm.
point, now after that entire journey, I'm meant to be graduating in about 3 weeks. And here I go calling my dad saying, Oh, Dad, sorry, but my film's banned and I don't think I'm going to graduate. So,
Wow.
in that chaos, I think chaos brings out the beauty of a person. It teaches you so much about yourself. So I ended up going to India, cheating that film in India. And then the pressure came that, okay, you're graduating. I've stood by you. And I'm grateful that, my parents have been there to support me in my education, which I think is beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
and I had no idea where I wanted to live, no idea whatsoever. So I was shooting in Rajasthan in India, in the middle of the desert at 5 o'clock in the morning, waiting for a sunrise shot. And I saw this absolute chaos. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to move here. I'm going to move to India. And mind you, I've never lived in India. I mean, I left when I was 3. So I've lived in many places, but I've never lived in India. And I said, oh my gosh, like, if I can learn how to work in India, I can work anywhere, because the skin that this industry is going to give me in India is going to be so thick that I could get anywhere, right? I would, because up till then I'd only had the book smart kind of experience. But here in India, I was everything I'd ever learned in a book. It was like the exact opposite. It was organized chaos. And I'm like, how do these people make a film like this? And then I realized the beauty of it. So, yeah, the next thing I knew, I'd landed in Bombay, and that was it. I started my career.
It's an incredible story, and it's so wow, it's so rich. It's so filled with experience.
I think learnings. I think I think when you love something so deeply, it pushes you into spaces that you don't the growth you have you can't comprehend the growth that it gives you.
So beautifully put. It's so beautifully put, really. You mentioned something very, very nice, and I absolutely want to talk to you about that. Cinematic truth.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Life. um Cinematic truth. Why did I kind of coin that as my voice? Because I'm a feeler of the world. I definitely feel that we all have a purpose in our lives, and we're all brought here for a reason. And I feel very lucky and blessed that I was able to understand what my reason and purpose was. And kind of the injustice of life tears me apart. It tears me apart that I cannot fathom that we're all born the same. We're all born equal. We're all going to die the same. We're all equal. But for some reason, this injustice occurs around us. And these are the catalysts to my films because I use film as a platform to raise awareness or provide a voice or just provoke a thought, an experience, an emotion that could, you know, potentially change the way you might think about something. I think we underestimate the power of that platform that film has. Um, Most of my films, for example, the one that did quite well was about terrorism in India, but about the emotional aftermath. I've done films about specially able children. I'm currently writing a film about surrogacy. Um, Another film that I was scripting earlier was about alter egos. So I really like to find things that just trouble me as a human being. You know, I think so often we are so blinded or just boxed in with this circle of expectation that we really don't even look up and around us. And I'm someone that feels that there's a greater global responsibility. You know, I think if you're born and if you're breathing, it's not just, okay, I have to do this. You are a part of this global society. And I think we're meant to play our part in it.
I agree with you. Absolutely, absolutely agree with you. I think I had a look at yes, is it Galwa? Is that the name of the?
Gawa.
This is the one you won like a ridiculous amount of awards for. There's like this crazy list. But I think that that's the epitome of what you're saying. Or actually, also the film about surrogacy that you're working on at the
Yes,
moment. This we have to talk more about this. This is the one we chatted about on the train, and
yes.
wow, this is so intense. But yeah, I agree with you. Exposing these experiences and exposing these realities and giving them a voice.
And, you know, in that, you really find your own voice. I've discovered that. You know, film has been the one thing that has always stood by me. It sounds very difficult, perhaps, for someone else to understand or gather that intention of what I'm saying, but it has been my shield. It has been my protector. I've been through very, very difficult, challenging times in my life, and film has always stood by me. And I think when you're an artist, in whatever your art may be, or even if you're a human in that sense, you're gifted with these things. You know, you're gifted with these things that equate to your soul and make you feel alive deep down. I just think many times we're forced to not look at them.
I mean, I think that also we're trained not to look at them.
Yeah.
You know, we're trained to work in a system and abide by the rules and fulfill a certain, as you said before, you used the wonderful word expectations. You know, we are taught to do that and to be that and to fulfill that. And I as an artist, I believe I completely understand what you're talking about. You know, for me, you mentioned it before that when you listened to me singing, how it moved you and how it had an effect on you. And for me, music, but actually, especially the gift of singing and being in the moment of singing,
Yeah.
this for me is the most powerful form of expression to connect to another human soul
Yes.
and to move them and to influence them and to create change.
100%. I completely agree with you. And I
Yeah.
think when you are equating at that level, it's perhaps because, I don't know, I mean, I can speak for myself that the pain of my life has somehow been the greatest growth of my life through film, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You could take these experiences and transform them through the platform that you love and learn through doing that and also experience hardship through doing that. But of course, as you
Exactly.
transmute it, actually, you confront it and you transmute it.
Exactly.
I mean, I completely understand. Like a lot of the songs that I have written until recently are really quite melancholic.
Yeah.
But that's because I had to take these pains and these pains that I felt or that I couldn't even give words to, these experiences. I always feel like it's like going into the world and without intending to, I absorb these experiences or situations, and then if something lingers in me, it will come out in a song because it has to.
Exactly. It's something you can't control, you know? Actually, I'd like to take my mask off and share my deepest pains because maybe it's a platform where other people might be experiencing pain and or it's it's something I'm very passionate about, and one of my dreams is to kind of write a book about this.
Mm.
So this is quite um, strong in the sense of it can definitely um, it's a big cookie to absorb. But I have had a lot of death in my life at a very young age. So actually, my first film, which speaks about the emotional aftermath of terrorism in India, was inspired by the state of mind I was in, which was grief. And the reason for that was because when I was 18 years old, during my freshman year of college in Miami, I lost my brother in a car accident. So film became my shield and became my absolute savior in a way, in its most productive sense. And a few years ago, very recently in that respect, I had another absolute unfortunate experience where I lost another member of my family, um, which was my sister.
Mm.
So my brother was 24 years old and my sister was 30 years old. And yeah, we were on my sister's 30th birthday holiday trip. And
Wow.
today I am the only living child, the youngest of my three siblings. We're always connected. I just think that our bodies, these are just our physical carriers, but our soul is eternal. But I wanted to share that because I think we, like I said, before we started this, that I want to be naked because it's very difficult to be naked in the world that we live in. It's very difficult to
Mm.
sit and be able to have a conversation with someone in its truest sense of life. It's rare. It's rare that you come onto a train and you get to sit next to someone that you can actually deeply feel like, oh yes, there are just two souls connecting here. um,
Mm.
and for me, film has been my protector in that manner, um, because I feel that it has allowed me to celebrate experiences in my life in many different ways.
Thank you for sharing that. I think this is the power of art, um, to transform,
Yeah.
to take these experiences and to put them, it's like, it's how we process stuff, you know? I always say, I don't know how it is for you as a filmmaker, but I always say, I don't write a song. The song comes through me. Like it's like the inspiration knocks on my door, and sometimes it's really like when I'm open to it and I'm in a receptive space, it's almost like I can feel 5 or 6 different songs knocking on the door at the same time, and I have to tell them to stop because it's like too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like having a fight at the door. I'm like, guys, I can only handle one, maximum two at one time, please.
Exactly.
But I feel like we are conduits, actually. We're open.
Yes.
And the creative inspiration comes through us. And if we don't take it, then it will pass on to somebody else because these things have to be shared.
Yeah.
These things they need to be expressed in the physical world.
I agree. And I think that has a lot to go with your upbringing. I grew up in a very um, creative household in the sense that creativity or an opinion of difference or just an opinion in itself was very much encouraged. It was very encouraged to say, okay, why don't you agree? What is your thought process? What is it that you feel? So growing up, I gained a very deep understanding of respect of the difference. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's something that I mean, I've been noticing that that's something that lacks a lot when I just kind of observe things around me, which might even give way to another film. But yeah, I mean, I think your childhood really plays a big role. Like I was saying, my dad is a photographer. So just to share a bit of my
Yes.
of why I found my father inspiring in his body of work. He's a landscape photographer. He has traveled to like 92 countries and like I think like a massive amount, like
Mhm.
92 or like 57 countries and 92 cities, something crazy. So my childhood was kind of following my dad wherever he was going and being woken up at like 4 in the morning to catch a sunrise shot on my school holidays. Um, and he fell in love with landscapes because he believed that, you know, people were not giving Mother Nature the respect or the celebration that it needs. And he would work a lot with conservation organizations, a lot with WWF to try and raise awareness in different regions. Recently, he's done something extremely inspiring, and the reason why I want to share this is because it goes to show you that the sky is really, the limit in that way. Because so he is the first photographer in the world that currently has 6 of his photographs in space.
In space.
Yeah, they are inside the International Space Station.
Wow.
And yeah, so this happened at the end of last year. I think it was a dream that he'd been chasing for about 20 years, if I'm correct, 15 to 20 years. And his photographs are in space. And when I asked him, I'm like, Dad, what is the reason? Like, why do you need to send your photographs to space? Is it something that, oh, I want that credibility or what is it? And he said, no, I just feel really bad that, these astronauts or cosmonauts go up into space to save us, to ensure that we can wake up and sleep every single day, but they don't have a connection to home. They've lost that connection
Mhm.
to humanity. And a photograph might be able to give them that feeling that they're not alone. So he sent up 6 images of different flowers from around the world. And it
Wow.
just made me realize that, you know, we really don't understand the potential in ourselves. We think we do, but there's always another layer, if you know what I mean. Like your journey is always going to grow.
Absolutely. And I think you just said the key word, which is growth. And
Yeah.
you talked about that before during your process, but I think this is the challenge, and I find it for myself. It's so easy to get comfortable through habit, through the habit of doing things. The point is, how do we keep growing? Like, how do we keep ourselves in that zone of growth, which is often at times uncomfortable? And I think
Yes.
this is especially interesting for self-employed artists
Yes.
like ourselves or other creative women or business owners, because we don't have anybody pushing us. We are the ones responsible. We have to set the boundary, like
Hmm.
we have to set the line. Like, how do we keep walking towards that? So that's a very interesting point. How do you keep yourself growing?
It's a really, I would be dishonest if I were to say, oh, yeah, I'm growing all the time. If I were to say that life's expectations don't play a role in that, of course they do. So, I moved back to Dubai after getting married 2.5 years ago. Um, and I'm surely not in a creative space that I need to be. I'm someone that's highly influenced by my environment. I absorb that very much so. So if I'm not in a space where, or a city that I'm feeling that openness of creativity, and you're meeting different people, for example, just like yourself, it becomes very challenging.
Mm.
I think I always constantly have that belief in my art form, and I have that trust in my art form that wherever it takes me, I kind of surrender myself to it. If I know that, for example, now I'm not where I need to be, I trust it. I trust that, okay, this might just be a passage of time. For example, locally, like I said, I'm very involved in theater locally, and that's something I do that gives me that creative space. And I think that in itself, that sustaining that challenge in itself becomes a growth.
So sustaining that friction almost. It almost
Yes,
sounds like a friction.
yes, yes, exactly. Because, Dubai's film industry is very underdeveloped. Um,
Mm.
it's not a space that you can really open up, and um, it's not a mature market when it comes to film. So it's very difficult, having come from a very mature market like India, being Bollywood, where you're constantly equating at a level, all your friends are in the field or are in an arts field. They're just, every day you're having certain conversations, where life here, or like, and I'm sharing this because I'm sure many times, women are kind of put in a situation where certain compromises end up being made, and it's not easy. It's not
Mm.
easy when you look at kind of the expectation of a woman, So it's difficult. It's difficult to kind of, rummage through that. But currently, I'm developing a web series as well, trying to kind of get Dubai. I would like it to be Dubai's first kind of international web series that comes out at a high production value, and a high form of storytelling. And
Mm.
and I have my surrogate film that I'm writing, and that keeps me going. But sometimes it's very difficult. I mean, I'm not going to, like I said, I want to be naked in this, in the hopes that, another woman sitting somewhere around the world may relate to what I'm saying.
I want to give a little bit more background because, of course, I've been privy to more background through the conversation that we got to have on the train.
Yes.
So, to fill in our listeners, so you said you moved back to Dubai, you fell in love, and of course, this was something that I was very interested in chatting with you about when we were on the train together.
Yes.
And you went from this kind of high rising career.
Yes.
And guys, if you're curious, just Google her. You can find out really about how successful and how much media coverage she was beginning to get, and starting to grow in the Indian movie industry. And you chose to let that go for love, and to move back, as you said, to Dubai, where both you and your husband's family are based,
Hmm.
and to be with the family. But I myself understand how hard that sacrifice is. I also moved to Germany for love, and I was actually studying at a music university at the time, and I quit my program. And at the time, that was my biggest dream, was to study music and to complete a program. So, but I chose to quit because love, the heart. You have it on one of your Instagram posts. The heart wants what it wants,
Yes.
and it does. And so you came back to Dubai, and you started at ground zero.
Yes.
Um, and so you're kind of digging yourself out of ground zero at the moment. And as you just mentioned, you have creative projects that you have on the go. Your new the movie that you're working on, the surrogacy movie, which we'll totally talk about a little bit more because the topic is freaking fascinating and we have to talk about it.
Yes.
But also, as you just said, a new web series for Dubai. This is also super interesting. But like these sound like, or as I know you, these are the more kind of creative experiences of your soul.
Yes.
But of course, the reality as strong, independent women, despite being married, is that we want to earn our own money.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, firstly, how are you doing that and supporting yourself? And how are you dealing with the struggle of being, as you just so well said, in a space that's not that supportive for your creativity or not in the way it could grow you as a creative artist? Like, what are you doing for yourself? And also, how are you supporting yourself financially through your art at the moment?
Um, like I said initially, film is my everything. Sometimes I feel in life you can't have everything at that given point in time. And there must be
Mm,
a greater learning. There must be a reason why suddenly I'm not in the space that I need to be. You know, what is it testing? What is it really bringing out in me? Maybe it's bringing a depth out of my creativity that I'm not aware of right now. It's not easy. I'm not going to sit and lie about that because it isn't. There are days where, an artist's life is lonely, as it is, anyways. But it's lonelier when the dialogue is limited around you in the environment as a whole. Um,
mm,
but that's where I honestly deeply trust my art. Like, I trust film. I really feel this deep guided trust and protection from film, that I know my time will come. I know the right things will fall into place at the right time. It's just that I am focusing on my love, like you said. And that in
mm.
itself is also a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? It also has its beauty. Um,
Yes.
when I moved here, obviously, I very quickly understood that this was not, I would not be able to equate at the level I needed to. So, in terms of financially, I do commercial work. So I fell into doing commercials and falling into that space for branding and online digital content, and that's kind of where I cover what I need to. At the same time, I've also started an event management company with my husband, which became
Mm,
an outlet for my creativity. That, okay, I can tell stories in this space. And I also do a lot of theater. So I'm always, throwing myself into any bit of environment that can enable me to breathe, if that makes sense.
mm,
Because there's a true joy and love that I have in, for example, being a wife. I love being with my husband. I absolutely adore it. I love, stepping out. I love whatever it might come with it, the joys and growth that come with that. And I feel they're two different roads, but at one point I know they're going to meet. It's just the patience that is required, I think.
This unshakable faith and trust is incredibly inspiring, and in yourself, but in your art, and how you said how the art carries you. Something I have felt, especially when I'm on tour, is it's like, as I said, the songs, I make the songs or they're born through me, but they often feel like they have, or I really feel that they have their own life.
Yes,
And so when I go on tour, it's like I'm not alone because the songs are there with me, you
exactly.
know?
100%.
And there's this relationship. And I feel that when I sing the song, like even if I'm having a really shitty day and I feel like it's been hard, I've caught my crap wherever, I'm tired, I'm not at all in a grateful headspace for living my life. I get onto the stage and then I play the song and it's like, it's like an exhalation. It's like
Yes,
coming home.
exactly what you said. It's like coming home.
And I know for my
100%.
Yeah, and I know for myself, like that's the reason why I have to sing every day, even if it's just 30 minutes, like that I train my voice and I sing, or I'm always working on something new. And that doesn't mean I'll ever share it publicly. A lot of the vocal work I do for myself is very private and I would never share it. But the empowerment and the connection to home and to the depth of myself that I feel through accessing my voice. It keeps me sane.
100%. And it is challenging, you know. There are times that, of course, deep within myself, I'm like, oh my God, like I can feel I'm not equating at the wavelength I need to be. But then again, it's that trust. I don't know. I really feel that. I really, really do. Because, you know, also in my society, coming from an Indian society, it's not a very open society in comparison to perhaps the societies I've lived within. I
Mm,
have been raised in a much more liberal sense, you know, by even having a father who is a photographer, or the arts being encouraged, or, you know, yes, go to film school, you know, any of these things. After I got married, I really realized that are very different to the norm around, or
mm,
to the expectation, or the stereotypical expectation that exists. The reason why, you know, for example, with my husband and I, what's incredible is he does not come from an artistic sensibility, but he respects where I come from. And I think that's
mm,
important when it comes to my art form. He respects that you know, he understands what film means to me. He really gathers the depth of that. Um, but most definitely, you know, I don't know any other filmmaker. I know one other woman who's in Dubai, who's an Indian filmmaker, who I'd love for you to have a chat with at one point too. But
absolutely.
it's, you know, it as a female, it's not even understood. You know, our society is not one that is encouraged of expression. And I'd not known that. I had not known that because I'd never really, you know, grown up in that, but definitely in the society I see around me in Dubai at present, I don't see a window of expression. I don't see an encouragement of, oh, okay, what is your opinion? You know, it's very much more so of, these are the stereotypical expectations.
How do you work with that for yourself?
I haven't figured it out yet. I think
Mm,
I really, you know, I think there's an external and internal. I think you understand, because it's, you know, as a filmmaker, I'm also very much obsessed with the psychology of social behavior, the psychology of our internal behavior. You know, I'm very obsessed with humans, if that makes sense.
mhm.
Um, I
Absolutely.
really find that there's so much in there, um, to explore, and there's so many stories. As a storyteller, you're always kind of searching, right?
Mm.
It's this everlasting desire of curiosity. So I feel that witnessing certain things have really given me a texture to myself as a human, and also artistically. For example, in my film about surrogacy, this is one of the things that the film talks about. It addresses certain gender inequalities that I feel exist. It addresses, you know, society's expectations, and kind of this box, you know, that okay, it's meant to fit into this box. Whatever doesn't fit into this box is wrong. So
Mm.
it's not a form of judgment in what I'm saying. It's a form of learning that okay, why is this society existing in this manner? What is it? I want to go in deeper. Um, you know, I think I'm not going to say educated, but I think I when you are an artistic individual, I think you're much more open to the lack of judgment. You know, I don't think we look at something like, oh, this is so different, and we immediately throw judgment onto it. I think we're more like, I want to learn. I want to learn what's going on. Um,
Yeah.
I think that ever dying desire to learn is something that always pushes me and reminds me to realize that, you know, to respect the difference.
You say that in one of your Instagram stories in the highlight, that that was one of the main motivators for you to chase a woman down for 1 year and then go to India and interview her
Yes.
to understand both sides of the story. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So I agree with you 100% that I don't think you can find a film finds you. Um, and I was inspired by my dad, actually. So a few years ago, my dad gave me an article that came out like in a Sunday newspaper, and it was an article about surrogacy. And I was taken aback. And my dad's like, Gauri, I think this will be a beautiful film. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I just put it aside. A few years later, as I grew a bit older and you come into a deeper understanding of being a woman, this thought always lingered in my mind. I'm like, wait, how would you feel? Like, can you imagine? So, for those listening that don't know what surrogacy is where a couple cannot conceive, or they desire not to go through the pregnancy themselves, and they contract a surrogate carrier, so another woman, to hold basically their child for them and give birth. So the child is 100% yours genetically, both in sperm and egg, unless obviously there is a medical kind of inability, then obviously a donor might come into play. But I was so intrigued that as a woman, what would you feel to give birth to another person's child? And we say there's this power of the maternal instinct. There's this power that God gives you when I don't have children yet, but when you're giving birth, or there's certain things that God gives you that a woman can handle. And I felt that, wow, after coming from a background where at that time I had only lost my brother, but then to lose my sister and to imagine a mother, my mother going through such an experience is horrific, as too with my father. But what would you feel? It's a sense of a loss, isn't it? Or is it not? So all these questions kept running through my mind. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm making a film about surrogacy. And I wanted, so a lot of the work I do is very, very raw. It really, really, I mean, it's as naked as I can get. And it really attacks the topics like head on. But then I realized that, of course, there's a commercial viability to the work that you're doing as well. And I needed to find a balance where I could showcase my voice, but at the same time, have it be something that people want to spend money on a cinema ticket and come and watch. So I was then inspired by my society around me, this new society that I was seeing, these ways of expectations that I was not able to understand. And I said, wow, like I should put a character in this society and see what happens to her. So I can't reveal much more about the story, but it's basically about an individual from this society living in Dubai, finding out that they can't conceive and go on a journey to find a surrogate carrier. So once I kind of understood about surrogacy, like I said earlier, I really have a deep belief that there's a global responsibility, especially when you are putting an artistic expression out into the world, because you really do not know the power of it. So if I'm to sit and say, okay, I'm going to make a film about surrogacy because I feel surrogate carriers are being abused, I feel that they are forced into this line of work, and so forth, it would be highly hypocritical of me to put that message out there without going and learning for myself that what is actually happening at the ground level. And this is what I've always done with my work. I don't care what number is written on a check in front of me. I mean, for example, if I'm saying I cannot let go of my moral compass, I see filmmakers compromising on that, and I just think it's, there's a greater role that you play in society when you are a filmmaker. So I started researching in an area in India called Gujarat, which is a state in India, and is very much a hub for surrogacy. And in the article that my father had given me a few years ago, it was about this lady who was a doctor, but she had been on Oprah and she was getting a lot of heavy press. And I said, wow, okay, why is this woman kind of, and I had a very negative preconception. I said, I have to meet this lady. I need to go into villages. I need to go into the homes of these surrogate mothers. I need to ask them, these surrogate carriers, like, I need to understand at a ground level. I need to feel the grain. Only if I feel it can I make you as an audience member understand it, right? And feel it. So I set out on a journey. Obviously things got delayed. I had a lot of setbacks, after losing my sister and this and this and that. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm going and I'm making this happen. And this doctor was exceptionally difficult to track down. I think many times when you look at countries like India, or even if you look at countries like Africa, the press has really, this is my personal opinion, absolutely my personal opinion, but has really misrepresented the truth of what is happening. Because if you hypersensitize something, it sells. It's that simple. And I didn't want to fall into that. And this doctor would never speak to anyone because, this is the kind of experience that she had. So a year later, I was like, I am not stopping, chasing, chasing, chasing. And I finally got an interview. And I was on a trip with my writer to Gujarat. And I had previously, as much as I try as a filmmaker to not have an opinion before I step foot into a place, I'm human. It's impossible to say that I have no opinion at all.
Yes.
But the opinion I had was graciously, I was rewarded to find a much deeper learning in the experience of surrogacy. I went in thinking these women are being abused, and I can't understand how can a doctor, like a female doctor, sit there, set this entire thing up to abuse the womb of a woman that is probably the greatest gift of God. If you really think of, you can have all the technology in the world, but you can have everything, but the only two things that exist that are an absolute reality are life, or I mean death, firstly, but life as well. That's something beyond our control.
Yeah.
And I was very pleasantly surprised. Not to say that even if you look at kind of my Instagram stories, when I kind of started sharing this online, you'll see that the first day I went to a clinic and there was a sign outside, like a massive billboard, and the billboard said, "Oh, I forget, like, oh yes, test tube babies." And I was astonished. It broke me. And I'm sitting and I'm saying, hold on, there's a massive billboard on the main road that's selling test tube babies. Why is no one reacting?
Oh my God.
And my writer and I were mortified. We're like, wait, this is, I mean, there's a respect you give to a soul, if you know what I mean. And to say test tube baby, I was astonished. But when I went in a step further, and then I went to the villages and I met, for example, that doctor who I was chasing, but then I met these women in their homes and I got to learn about them. I was amazed because some of them, when I asked them, one of the most beautiful things that they told me, I said, why do you do this? Of course, the financial reward is definitely a primary factor. But they really taught me something, because each one of them just looked at me and they're like, what greater gift could I give somebody than to give them the gift of life?
Wow.
And that's what film really teaches you. In my journey, it really makes you think you're chasing and chasing. My production company is called Chasing Frames. And you think you're chasing and chasing and chasing, but you realize, a split second, you're like, wait, hold on a minute. I'm not even thinking correctly. And, some of them, they celebrate that child's birthday. They have that child baby's picture in their house. I mean, I've seen women literally where they're like, this was my house, which was, they're homeless. It's just a shack. I mean, just like a metal roof above their head underneath a tree. And now they have a home. And I understand the magnitude of financial stability. But what I found most incredible about these individuals and these women was that even though they are perhaps more in need, so one of the things that my film questions is the love of a mother. A woman who comes from a stronger economical background is doing it because of the love of a mother. She wants a child. But so is a surrogate carrier. She's also a mother, and she's doing it for her child to have a secure future.
Wow.
So when you look at it, there's certain things in life, and I'm very fascinated with the things that I'm very fascinated with are the greater things of life, like that pure love of a mother, or there's certain things that are gifts of life that we cannot control. They are natural instincts that are within us, and I'm very fascinated by that. And in my journey, to see also, not to say that many women that the commissioning parents didn't even let them see the child after giving birth. um,
Mm.
of course, to say there are many stories that perhaps would never be told to me, because are they going to speak to me, or are they going to secure their job? um, I understand all of that, but as a filmmaker, it's your job to kind of understand, okay, where is your ethical compass going? And you absorb all of it in. In my work, I never put a prejudgment onto an opinion for the audience in terms of, yes, surrogate, for example, surrogacy is amazing, or surrogacy isn't. I like to give my audience a wide enough understanding for you to then kind of make up your own mind, or not even, but just gain your own understanding of what perhaps your truth towards this could be. I sat in a doctor's clinic with a woman who is a broker. She's a broker. So I said, okay, what does that mean? And when that happened, her phone rang. And when her phone rang, it was a doctor looking for, it was as if she was selling real estate. She's like, okay, you need 3 eggs, you need one surrogate carrier. It was a list of commodities.
Oh my God.
And I asked her, I mean, had I chosen to do this as a documentary, it would have been very powerful, but I purposely challenged myself not to, because that's my comfort zone. And I asked her, and I said, don't you feel bad? You're a woman. Like, how does this make you feel that you're speaking of someone's eggs as if they're nothing? And, she said, this is my work. It doesn't mean that I don't respect them, because I'm actually going to be a surrogate carrier at the end of the year. This is something that I want to do. So I think when we look at a situation from the outside, we look different, right? And also when we're just on the inside, we look at it different. And I think my desire is to discover, because I don't have an answer for myself. I don't have an answer. It's far too complex to say that I'm holding someone else's child. Am I ethically being correct? Am I not? Will I always feel a connection to that child? Is my womb meant to be used in that way? Am I, there's so many questions, which is what fascinates me. And I think there are many individuals doing social surrogacy, which basically is where you are commissioning a surrogate carrier just because you can't be bothered. A lot of
Do you mean that, like, so as a woman, you can't be bothered having a baby, so you commission?
Yes,
Is that what you mean by
yes,
a social
yes.
surrogacy? Okay.
Um, and you are, your body looks great. You don't want to go through the whole process. Perhaps you're somebody in the public eye and you don't want to have to go through all of that. So I mean, like I said, it's complex.
It really sounds like, I mean, yes, it's an incredibly complex topic, and there's a number of things that come to my mind. One of them, I think, well, you mentioned the word ethics and morals, and I mean that's an entire philosophical question unto itself, like what is right and what is wrong,
Right.
and what does that mean, and from whose perspective? And you mentioned from the inside and from the outside, looking in or looking out. And then it sounds to me like what you're doing is really kind of like going in there and pulling up every single piece of the Rubik's cube and then just looking at it and trying to understand it and then putting it down again. You know what I mean? So it's just really absorbing this experience through asking questions and through just being in it and breathing in it and experiencing it. And then, as you said, not trying to lean your audience into one way or another, but to give them this palette that you've experienced through asking so many questions, and then let them decide for themselves what that is for them. And even then, that doesn't make it right, the topic, or wrong. It just means that you potentially give them, firstly, the opportunity to contemplate a topic they might not even think about. And secondly, the chance to, through what you've shared, decide for themselves if they think that's right, wrong, if they have an opinion, if they don't have an opinion, and all of this.
100%. I think this what you said is very interesting. This concept of right or wrong. You know, I
Yes,
mean, why? I mean, that in itself is a chain on each one of our necks.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know what? Like, I mean, all right. Well, you wanted to go into depth. So
But I feel the what I'm trying to say by highlighting that is I think there's, a greater discovery if we look beyond a right or wrong.
exactly. And the questions themselves can limit us.
Yes,
And the answer limits us because it's we set a boundary to our perception. We say, "Oh, I know that already,"
exactly.
and then we don't think about it anymore. We stop thinking. And I think actually to come full circle, you said that before, the hunger to learn, the hunger
Mhm.
to understand, the hunger to be curious about something, to accept that nothing is ever finished. Like even when you spend, I don't know, how many years is it going to take you to write and produce this film? Like how many years would that be?
At least two.
Yeah. So even when you spend 2 years of your life exploring in detail this topic far more than most of us, anybody else would, you may come to a conclusion, you may not, and that doesn't mean anything. Actually, it just means you explored the topic, which
Exactly.
is good. But the thinking doesn't need to stop there. The exploration doesn't need to stop there. Maybe it does for you because you then pick up something else.
Right. Like I really feel that for me, my films are the start. So I'd just like to share something with my previous film, Gava.
Okay.
This film focuses on, it's a short documentary and it focuses on three different events in India. The first one being the partition. So that is when India and Pakistan were created. And the largest, at that point, I think now we've toppled that, but the largest Cuban migration at any
Mm.
given point in time. And the second event that it focuses on is the 26/11 blasts, the serial blasts that happened in India, in Bombay, where there were 5 to 6 blasts that kind of held the entire city hostage, very much targeted at tourists. And the third one being the July 13th serial blasts that actually happened when I was in the city. And this became kind of a thread, that I could braid it all together. But when I started to make this film, I said, okay, but what is it that I'm questioning, right? What is it that I'm questioning? Because now that I've expressed and shed my mask off, of course I had to spot check myself that, wait, why am I getting obsessed with this idea of death? Because it's what I know right now. And is it making me feel comfortable? Or am I trying to find security for myself? Or am I actually wanting to understand what has happened to these individuals? And I was immediately taken aback when I thought that, wow, like I saw this on television and on Thanksgiving dinner at my friend's house in London. And I said, I have to do something. Like, I can't just sit here and do nothing. I have to go to India. Like, I have to go and find out what is happening to these people. Because I had gone through death at that point in my life, but I was not at the mercy of an external force creating that, if that makes sense. And I said, I need to do something. And I felt this kind of patriotism that came inside of me. And I said, I need to go to the ground level and speak to these people. So once I kind of showed up in Bombay and I was, running around and trying to find people and getting chased by the cops and this and that, like, just really pushing myself to dig deeper. And I kept saying, okay, but what is the question I'm asking? What is it? And I could never get the answer. And that's when I realized that questions are not enough for this film. And the tagline of my film is questions are not enough, because that was the experience I was going through. That, you need to have that purpose of why are you doing this? And it was ever evolving and changing. Um, I'll share two incidences that I think are beautiful. When I was doing an interview with a gentleman so on the third blast that happened, we actually disguised ourselves as media and went to the bomb sites because that
Wow.
was kind of the safest way. the unsafely safe way. And
Okay.
and in that process, it's very much of, when you're a documentary filmmaker, you have to go and chase the story. People are not going to come to you. You have to chase. You meet someone who knows someone, so then you'll go to that someone. Someone will be like, oh, my mother is something, someone knows someone, and you just keep digging. If you dig enough, you will find the people you're looking for. So we came across a gentleman who had just lost his office. So the gentleman that works in his office, like an office clerk, the night before. And I was doing his interview, and he was absolutely in shock. I could completely understand where he was coming from. And I knew that he wanted to continue. I knew it because this was a platform for him. And that's when I realized two people in pain can give birth to a beautiful silent conversation. Nothing needs to be said, but there was such a depth of a language that was built between the two of us. And I asked my crew to all, leave the room. And I shared my experience with him. And I said, I understand where you're coming from. Maybe this is the reason why I'm making this film, because maybe it's about these moments of sitting in front of you and saying, I'm as vulnerable as you are. And I don't know why I'm focusing on death, but this is why I am, because I want to liberate people. I want people to see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel when you deal with grief. And I shared my story of losing my brother. And he immediately, there was just tears rolling down his eyes. And it was just this moment of a bond that was so deep, that became bigger than the film. And that's what I love in my experiences with my films, that it pushes you to grow so much more than you can imagine if you're receptive to it, especially because I'm chasing this constant cinematic truth. At, at the same time,
Mm.
sorry, just to share the other incident, I was leaving another bomb site, and I had this little knock on my window, and I opened it, and there was this little boy, and he said to me in Hindi, like, elder sister. So we address each other like that. So he's like, elder sister, please take my phone. I have all these videos of when the blast happened. Please take it and show the world, show people what's happened. And it was a kid.
Wow.
So, this is the journey I'm obsessed with, because if I immerse myself, I can then immerse it within my story, which can then release the power that I'm aiming for.
Ah, it's so intense, but I love it. Like it's and of course I as you tell your story and as you share your creative process, of course I'm holding my own experience of my own creative process, and I ask myself, does that work in me? Like is that true for me? How does that move in me? And I think this you really said it, this power to connect without words, in the depth, and I think often this it's not that we have to use emotion to connect, but emotion, when channeled in the right way, can be a powerful vehicle for bonding, for connection.
Yeah, very powerful.
Yes, and I mean, I think that's what's so powerful, as you've just said, about digging through all of this chaos, essentially, in your quest and your hunger to share the meat behind the stories, or behind the experience, even if you're not sure of what the question is. And for me, it's when I when I write a song, there's always an emotion, and sometimes I don't understand what that is, but without the connection to that thing, to the depth of what that is, no song will ever come out. The only way I can write is by aligning with that. And as I said before, a number of my songs are melancholic or about very difficult topics, which a lot of people don't talk about. And that's the reason, because want to put the magnifying glass on those things. Like, how does it feel to be haunted by our own fear? Like, what does that look like when we talk about it, and why are we afraid to talk about it? Why don't we talk about it? What is death? I've written a song about death, and why are we afraid to talk about this? It's a part of life. Like, why can't we talk about it and look at it, without being afraid? And just, even if we don't have a conversation, but just to sit with it and to let it be there. So the power of art and the different mediums of art to shine the light of truth on these human experiences, so that we can yeah, as you said, give a voice to them and also to connect with each other in them and say, hey, as you did to that man, you're not alone. I know this. I felt that too. It's okay. It's okay to feel like what you're feeling. In the same way, if you're depressed, if you doubt yourself, if you're angry and chased by your own rage, it's okay. Be careful how you work with those emotions. But like where you are is okay. There's nothing wrong with you, you
Exactly.
know?
I think we're very often forgetting, again, that basic fact that we all live on the same planet. Like we're all kind of we were all born and we're all gonna die. Like whether we experience an absolute joy of happy, emotion of happiness or an emotion of sadness or whatever it could be, I think this constant ego that drives us is our greatest killer.
I mean, I was just having this conversation the other day, especially for women, about self doubt,
Hmm.
and perfectionism.
Yeah.
and and how these wonderful things really hinder us
Yeah.
from, and you mentioned that before, we truly don't know our potential, and we are actually responsible for putting ourselves into our potential. So what I love so much about what you said in this last hour or so is how you're aware at the moment of your environment and how that affects your potential, but you're aware of it, so you're able to work with it in a constructive way to still help your growth, and we're really responsible for this. And it's so, actually, it's devastating to me. It hurts me for myself too. It's, I'm not outside of this conversation, but that we surrender ourselves sometimes to the stories and to the insecurities in our own heads, and keep ourselves small
Mhm.
and prevent ourselves from standing in our power, or from setting up a situation for ourselves that allows growth. And I think there's a number of things that contribute to that personally. And in my experience, family upbringing had a big, big role in it. School and the educational system has had a big role in it, and also the expectations of society. I think it changes a little bit now, in this, through social media and the power of connection. And I feel that we're really at a very empowering point where we're able to start really liberating ourselves. But I still feel the legacy of these effects.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a really important word that you just said, which is legacy, because I think very often we kind of forget the mark that we're going to leave behind, if that makes sense.
Mm.
I think we have a tendency to, of course, we want it all, right? Who doesn't? Who doesn't want that perfect life? But we forget that when we're gone, that legacy that you leave behind of the courage or discourage or whatever your experiences are is the learning that you're going to give back to the world. I don't know if that you connect to that at all, but I really feel that we're so often looking at it just for ourselves.
So, my dear, it has been a incredible conversation, as I knew it would be. and and as I said, I knew that we would be able to open this door, and it could be 16 hours of episodes that we could shoot together. Um, but I do believe we're going to need to come slowly to the end of
Yes.
this conversation for today. I want to thank you again for being vulnerable, and for just sharing your creative inspiration. And that was the thing that touched me the most when we connected on the train that day: how you talk about the creative process, how you talk about your love, your passion for the work you do, how you talk about your drive. This inspired me so much, and it just did again now. This hunger, this fire, this burning, this complete throwing yourself into the process without any regard for fear or anything like this, or doubt, or however, this, I will do it and I will make it happen and I have to. It's so, wow, empowering, and just it makes me want to stand on a mountain and scream like
Let's go together. You pick the mountain, we'll climb it together.
it just inspires me. So really, thank you so much for being so open and sharing yourself so completely.
Thank you for firstly giving the opportunity and honor for me to be able to share. And I think what you're trying to do is something I have a deep respect for, because I think you're really trying to say that, wait, guys, hold on, ladies, there's something more here. Um, and I think the bridges you're trying to build are ones that could really leave a big influence on individuals. So I really respect what you're doing. And I know that this is something that is going to relate to a lot of women, I'm sure. Even the way that, you asked, how do you deal with that? Or speaking, it's very easy to say I'm an artist, but as a woman, there are certain expectations that come into play. And I think very often as women, we don't talk about it. We just put it under the rug.
That's really true. That's really true. I mean, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. And yeah, that's really my wish with this, with the podcast, that and with the community, with One Woman Tribe. I really wish so deeply that we can just open up a platform where we can talk openly and share ourselves really from the depth of how we think and how we operate, and just, understand each other better as females, as artists, as self-employed women, because we're not alone.
Yeah,
We have each other. We're together,
exactly.
and we need to feel that.
And that's all thanks to you.
Oh, I'm blushing. Thank you. Uh, so there's one question. There's one question I always ask at the end of the
Okay,
podcast. If there is one message that you could leave the world with, what would it be?
dream. Dream enough so you find what your dream is and then chase it every single day. Because the power that is in that is like nothing else to me.
Beautiful. I love that so much. Hey, thank you so, so much.
Thank you. And yes, keep inspiring.
Thanks so much for listening. If you liked the episode, please leave us a review. It would mean the world to me and to the One Woman Tribe team. For all of the info about Gauri, head on over to our website, onewomantribe.co. That is it for me for now. I wish you an amazing Christmas, a beautiful start into 2019, and I look forward to sharing this space with you again very soon.